Hey everyone! How many of you have ever heard the story in John chapter 4 about the Samaritan woman at the well? A lot of times we hear about it as being about racism and prejudice, but is that the end of the story? Let's talk about it right after this. So I've heard a lot of sermons on John chapter 4 about the Samaritan woman at the well and how when Jesus comes and he meets her and he asks her for a drink. John chapter 4 and verse 7 says, "There came a woman of Samaria to draw water, and Jesus said to her, 'Give me a drink.' For his disciples had gone into the city to buy food. And the Samaritan woman said, 'How is it that you, being a Jew, ask me, you asking me, you talking to me, are you talking to me? Since I'm a Samaritan woman, for Jews have no dealings with Samaritans.'" So right off the bat, we see it being a racial issue, right? Because Samaritans were half-breeds, for a better term. They were half Jewish, half something else. And because of that, they were kind of looked down upon by the Jews, because Jews were full-blooded, right? And so there were no dealings between the two of them. So she even says, "You talking to me?" But then Jesus turns the table on her, right? Talks to her about, if you knew who I was, he says, "You asked me for a drink." And then he says this, because he gets right to the core of the issue. Racism was really not her issue. John chapter 4 and verse 15, "The woman said to him, 'Sir, give me this water, so I will not be thirsty, nor come all the way here to draw.' And he said to her, 'Go call your husband and come here.'" Why would you bring your husband up? Well, because the lady had a problem. The woman answered, said, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You have well said, I have no husband. You have had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband. This you have said truly." So let's understand this a little bit, okay? Because here it starts out with, a racial issue, but Jesus really gets to the core of things. And he says, "Lady, you have an intimacy issue. It's not the people around you, lady, it's you." Listen, a lot of times people who don't want to deal with their issues, they just change the people around them. Instead of changing themselves, they change their scenery, they change the people, their relationships. She had 5 husbands, and now she's living with a guy who's not her husband. So she evidently had an intimacy issue. She couldn't connect with any man. And Jesus hits her right between the eyeballs, because the next thing she says is this. She says, "Our fathers worship at this mountain." Here it says, verse 20, "Our fathers worshiped in this mountain." How does worship have anything to do with me having 5 husbands or a 6th man in my life? Well, if you don't know this by now, worship is all about intimacy. Worship is intimacy with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And if you can't have intimacy with a human, you can't have intimacy with God. And Jesus really nailed her. Let me give you the Greek word for worship. The Greek word for worship is proskuneo. The word proskuneo is broken down into 2 words. Pros means face to face, and kineo, which means to kiss. So worship literally means to be face to face kissing somebody. In other words, you're so close to somebody that you can kiss them. So when you worship God, you are face to face with Him. You've opened yourself up and you're face to face with Him, kissing God. And it all came back to her intimacy issues with her husbands. She couldn't. She couldn't face her husbands. She couldn't be honest with them. She couldn't open herself up to them. So what did she do? She just kept changing them. But Jesus said, lady, you have an intimacy issue. And he says, the Father, he says, is looking for those who will truly worship him. Where are you at? You have intimacy issues? I'm not talking sexual. I'm talking spiritual. Because the bottom line is this, that Jesus wants to have an intimate relationship with you. He wants to look at you face to face. You ever notice people won't look at you in the eyes? Jesus wants to look at you in the eyes. He wants to come up this close and give you a kiss. Well, I hope this message blessed you. Read it for yourself. It's a great story. Bottom line is this. Open yourself up to Jesus. He wants to get intimate with you. He wants to know you, and he wants you to know him. Remember, at the very end, people are going to come to him and say, Jesus, I did all these miracles. And Jesus can say this, I never knew you. That's a hard thing to swallow. I never knew you. Don't let him say that to you. He's coming back. I hope you're ready. God bless you. We'll talk soon.